Your world is waiting, but first you have to access it. Welcome to the Joshua Roy Show. We don't do fluff, we do freedom. Real talk on mindset, cutting-edge coaching techniques, and the hidden frameworks for lasting change. If you're ready to move from being stuck to becoming the architect of your life, you're ready for this. Hit subscribe. Let's get to work. My name is Joshua Roy, and I'm a seminar leader and life coach. I've been running seminars and coaching now for the last 7 years. And over that period of time, I'm also someone who invests in education. I want you to think about that. Where do you invest your money? You invest in real estate. Some people invest in, shares and stocks and bonds and different things. People are investing in all sorts of things. One thing that I've found critical in life is to invest in this. Invest in the mind, because all of those other things, as good as they are, and many of them produce extra wealth and income, but one thing that's going to continue to give you quality of life is actually your mind. Because think about your state of mind and emotion. That really is the biggest part of our life. The quality of your life is relative to the quality of your emotions. I want you to really think about that and get that in your mind and get that in your heart. Is that when you think about how happy you are, how fulfilled you are in life, it all comes back to the quality of emotions that you have on a day-to-day basis. If you have good quality emotions, people would say, well, you're a happy person. If you have less than positive emotions, people might say, well, this person's in a mood. They're in a negative mood or a negative state. Or maybe you're someone who is continually that way and you've created a character around that. So some people go into a depressive character and, they've suffered with depression for years. What I've found with the use of NLP, these tools, is we can actually get people out of that. And that's why I started looking into it. And that's what we're going to discuss today, how we can do that. So without further ado, I want to tell you a couple of stories, then we'll get straight into today's webinar. The first story is a friend of mine, somebody that I worked with, a coaching client, who wanted to get himself a job. He was unemployed at the time. His past life was to do with hospitality, and therefore he wanted to get himself a job. And so he came to me saying, I'm really nervous about the job interview. Now, who here, just drop a yes in the comment if you've been and done a job interview and you were nervous. Drop a yes in the comments. Yes, I was nervous in the job interview. Who thinks it's quite easy to do it? Because not everyone does. I mean, here you have a panel of usually 3 people that are all looking at you, judging you. And they're judging you. They're giving you ticks if you say something good, say something positive, and they give you crosses if you don't, if you stumble over your words, if you fall into a heap. And who here has found that they've got into a state of confusion, or they've just not done a good job because of the stress? Who's had that experience? Just drop another yes in the comment if you felt that way. You felt that not only you're nervous, but when you get there, you find yourself giving a substandard performance. It's not a very good performance. You haven't done very well. You didn't go to one of Larry's acting school classes. You didn't put that into practice. And so, okay, so we've had that. So Lewis is saying definitely just last week. Great. So I worked with this young man and I said to him, when you go into that interview, you want to put yourself into an empowered state. What's it called? Just an empowered state. Now, how do we do that? How do we get ourselves into an empowered state? Well, this is where NLP comes into it. So NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming. That's what NLP is all about. It's Neuro-Linguistic Programming. What we mean by that is we're using language or using words to create new neurological pathways in the brain in order to reprogram the brain to give us different results. That's really what it is. We're reprogramming the brain. So think of your brain like a computer. Actually, computers are like us because we came first. But think of the brain and the computer as working kind of similarly. And all we want to do now is upgrade the software. We want to upgrade the operating system. And so NLP is like taking us from Windows 95 to 97, or it could be from Windows XP to Windows 10. So it's an upgrade, or depending on what sort of computers you use, it could be from the new version of Leopard or the new version of whatever Linux uses these days. So what we're doing is upgrading the software in the mind. The hardware is still there. The hardware is the same. You were born with 12 to 14 billion brain cells. And what makes a person more or less intelligent is not the number of brain cells. It's the number of connections between brain cells. Now, when neurons fire together, they wire together. So what we're wanting to do is create neurological connections in the brain. So when neurons fire together, they wire together. And the strongest way to produce those connections is to do three things. We want to combine language with emotion, and we want to combine emotion with movement. And so if you do those three things, the new connection or the new pathway in your brain will be very strong, very pervasive, and very powerful. So I worked with this young man and I said, listen, you're going to walk into this job interview and you're expecting at this moment to feel nervous. And did you know that expectations rule outcome? Did you know that? That whatever you don't get in life what you deserve, you get what you expect. So in life, you get what you expect. So if you expect that you're going to be nervous in the interview, guess what's going to happen? With painstaking regularity, whatever we project turns up. So if you believe you're going to be nervous, you think about the nervousness, that's what you're projecting into the immaterial world before it becomes material. And that then produces the result or the outcome. So we need to change that. So I worked with him and said this. I said, when you go into that room, what states would you prefer to be in? Rather than a state of feeling nervous and feeling, afraid and feeling as though you're being judged, what are some positive, empowering states that you could feel? And so he said, well, the first thing that I want to feel is confidence. You see, when I'm in a job interview, I want to feel confident. I want to feel like I'm sitting there across from these people who are judging me. I'm in front of this panel. But if I come across confident, at least then I'm going to do better in the interview. I know I'll do better in the interview. So we had our first emotional state. And NLP, what it is, it's about practicing emotional flexibility. It's about practicing emotional states until you get good at them. So we practice, we rehearse, we go through it over and over again until it becomes almost automatic. That's how any habit's formed. Any habit is formed through the repetition of behavior. We know that repetition is the mother of all skill. It's the mother of all learning. So we repeat it, and we can do this emotionally. So we want the emotion or the state of confidence. I asked him, what else? So just write down in the comments what states you think you would want if you were going in for a job interview. What are some of the states, the empowering states that you would want? Let's have a look. What can you come up with? Confidence, number one. What else? What else do you want? What other emotions are going to help you? Just write it down in the comments. An emotion you want. Empowered. Empowered is great. Empowered kind of covers every emotion. Calmness is a good one. So Janine, I might write that one, calmness. Do that as number 3. Let's do calm. It could be the state of being calm or even the state of peace. We would say that those two are quite similar, being calm or being peaceful. Excited, courageous. Excited can be very good. Sometimes we can overdo excitement. We don't want to turn up and be over the top excited. What happens when you're excited is you tend to speak really fast. So when you're excited, you want to get all the information out really, really fast. And what can happen is you can lose rapport with the people that you're with, especially if they're asking questions that are quite serious and you're just excited. You're shooting out these answers. Excitement can be counterproductive in this situation. So excitement is a really good state. You want to be excited about the idea of getting the job, but you also want to make sure that you've got that overriding calmness so that you're not going to be frantic. What happens when somebody becomes stressed out in a job interview? When they become stressed out, they'll often begin talking faster because of the nerves. And so if you're talking too fast, you want to slow it down a little bit. Take your time. Make sure that you're conveying the right message. That can be very good. Okay, grounded, present. I like to be more in control of my emotional output. Great. So we've got some really good answers there.
What we're going to do is we're going to put up for the second one, and this is the second one that I taught him, was on a roll. Has anybody ever been in a situation where you're just on a roll, where things were just happening for you? You just had that condition called flow, and you were just on a roll. I'm going to put that up there. So being on a roll is a really powerful one, especially for job interviews. Because when they ask a question, you want to be able to just flow with your answer. And if you can flow, that's a really good place to be in. And a lot of that comes from rehearsal. You want to practice, well, why am I here? Why do I want this job? Go over those answers, even say them out loud. One thing that I did when I started doing webinars, I've taught about 300 of these now. But when I first started teaching them, I'd go down to the park and I'd just start speaking to the trees. Like that was my audience. I was just using my imagination to pretend that these were the people listening to me. I'm running a webinar or seminar, and here I am speaking to the trees. And a lot of people looked at me with very strange looks on their face. Now, I did it early in the morning when usually nobody was around, but occasionally people would walk past and I'd just keep going. And people thought that I was a bit odd or a bit crazy. I didn't have a phone up to my head, see? But one thing I did find out, I was actually walking through Brisbane City one day. I'd caught the train and I had a seminar to teach that night. I was doing a 1 or 2 hour seminar and I hadn't rehearsed and I really needed to get a rehearsal in. So as I was walking along, I took a little earpiece and I put it in my ear. No, it wasn't an earpiece, it was a pen. I didn't have an earpiece. All I had was a pen on me. I held a pen up to my ear and pretended it was like a little tiny mini phone. And I just started talking, presenting my seminar. And nobody even looked at me. Nobody blinked an eye. Nobody cared that I was walking along talking to myself. It had, no bearing on anyone. However, that gave me the practice that I needed to then go ahead and present that webinar that night. So one thing I would recommend to get that state right, to be on a roll, is to rehearse your answers. Write down some of the questions. In fact, you can look it up on Google. What are the most common questions in a job interview? And then practice answering those questions. That's another way to do it. So I went through this, and the last state I had was the state of laughter or fun. You want to be able to easily laugh, not laugh all throughout don't laugh at their questions. Don't laugh all the time, but appropriately laugh. Because what laughing does, it relieves tension in the room. It relieves stress. And if you can have a little laugh with people, that's a wonderful way to really break the ice and also bring down the emotion of the judgmental atmosphere. So with this young man, I went over these things and I said, right, how are we going to install these into your nervous system so that when you go and sit down in that job interview, instead of feeling nervous and fearful, disempowered, you're going to feel these things instead. So I had him close his eyes and we just used the faculty of his imagination. And I said, now imagine that you're walking into the room where the interview will take place. And as you walk into that room, I want you to go ahead and connect with the feeling of confidence. Now, when I teach NLP, I use what's called a state elicitation script. Has anybody ever heard of that? A state elicitation script. If you've heard of it, just write, yes, I've heard of it in the comments. If you haven't heard of it, I'm going to tell you what it is. So a state elicitation script is simply some words that we say that will elicit the emotion that we desire. It's a way to lead somebody emotionally into a state. So I used the state elicitation script with him. As he had his eyes closed, I said to him, think about a time where you felt confident in the past. Think about a specific time. Go back to that time. See what you saw, hear what you heard, and feel the feelings of confidence in your body right now. And I usually click my fingers when I work with somebody. I say, right now, click my fingers, and suddenly he was in that state of confidence. Now, while he was in that state of confidence, I said, now that you're in that state of confidence, imagine that you're walking through the door into the job interview and carry that emotion with you. So let's look at what we're doing here. Just imagine that's a timeline. We have the past and we have the future on the other side. What we're using is the faculty of imagination, because I could ask you the question, what is reality? And in reality, there are seen forces and there are unseen forces. And both of them make up reality. What is reality? Well, if we think about the universe, It's time, space, energy, and matter. These are the four things that make up our universe. Time, space, energy, and matter. Now, how many of those are seen? Well, time. Can you see time? Unless there's a clock in front of you, unless you're looking at that clock, you don't see time. Time just passes without you seeing it. Do you experience time? Can you taste it? Can you touch it? So time is something that's relatively unseen. What about space? Can you see space? Can you see the space between the space? Well, air is clear. It's transparent. We see right through it. So we don't see space. Space is just emptiness. We really don't see it. We can see objects, we can see matter, but we don't see space. So this is an unseen force. Time, space, energy. What about energy? Do you see energy? Or do you just see the influence of energy? Do you see the impact of energy? Like when a car's driving along, you can hear it. You can hear the car. You know there's horsepower that's moving that vehicle along. But you don't actually see the energy itself. You just see the result of the energy. And the result of the energy is movement. It's sound. That's the result of. And so really, of those four, the only one that we can see is matter. Now, matter, when we have a look at it, what gives objects the illusion of matter is the movement and the arrangement of and the vibration of the subatomic parts. So even matter has infinitely more space than it has matter. So everything that you see that's solid or looks solid, has the appearance of being solid, has inside it infinitely more space than there is matter. And yet because of the vibration and the movement of that matter, it gives the illusion of being solid. It just does. That's how matter works. So we've got time, space, energy, and matter. And of those four, there's only one that's seen. Now, what other things are unseen? What about emotions? Are they seen or unseen? Well, you don't really see emotions. You can feel it. You can feel an emotion. You can see the influence or the impact of an emotion. So what we've got to realize is that there are seen and unseen forces in our world and in our life. Now, your thoughts. Can you see a thought? Therefore, is a thought real? And some people say that, well, if you can't see it, it's not real. If you can't perceive it via one of the five senses, that is visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, gustatory, or in other words, your sight, sound, feeling or sense of touch or emotion, also smell and taste. So if you can't sense it, how can it possibly be real? And some people live with this idea. But I want you to know that there's many unseen forces that we don't see. For example, a thought. A thought is not seen, but is a thought real? Well, we know a thought's real. And so what we're using here is we're using the unseen forces. And that's what NLP does for us. It helps us to use the faculty of your imagination. Because one thing we know is this. When you imagine something vividly, and you rehearse it, your unconscious mind does not know the difference between reality and fantasy. It doesn't know the difference. To your mind, it could be real even when you're only thinking about something. That's how powerful your thoughts are. Now, we're going to use the power of our thoughts in this process. So here's what we do. We're currently in the present. So what we do is we access a past emotion. For example, confidence. And we bring that past emotion forward to a future event. So here we're going back to the past, grabbing hold of the emotion, going forward into the future, and now we're experiencing that emotion using your mind or your mental projection, mental rehearsal, to create a scene whereby you will have that experience. What you're doing is you're planning for the experience. You're rehearsing for it. You're practicing. Every good actor does this. They rehearse their lines. They rehearse the part. This is a rehearsal. It's a mental rehearsal. Every athlete knows this. Every, leading business person knows this. They do these techniques. They project in their mind and they see things working out for their. They see themselves succeeding. They see themselves getting the free throw points. They see themselves getting that 3-pointer if they're on the basketball court. They see themselves hitting that home run. If you're in business, you see yourself getting the sale. You see yourself touch, moving, inspiring the audience. You rehearse all these things. And the more you do that, the more you rehearse it, the better you'll be at the time. because we know that repetition is the mother of all skills. Now, whether you do the repetition in your mind using the faculty of imagination or you do it in reality, guess what? To your unconscious mind, it's the same. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. And this is the big secret. This is really what's in it. This is how the secret works. You mentally project it. You rehearse it. You go over it in your mind. Then you go into reality and you put in the action steps to produce it, to make it the way you saw it. So I hope that makes sense. So we're here in the present. I'll explain it once more. We go back to the past. We get an emotion from the past. We take it forward into the future. We drop it into a future scene that hasn't happened yet as a mental projection, which means that when we get to that actual scene, we're going to have a far better chance of laying hold on that emotion. We're going to believe that it's out there waiting for us, and all we've got to do is step into it. After we did confidence, we went to the next one, being on a roll. Then we went to peace. Then we went to the last one. Now, long story short, once he went into this job interview, as he walked through the doorway, he felt all of these emotions go through his body, all of these empowering emotions. He sat down and began the interview. Now, the interesting thing was that this young man had 2 interviews on the same day. He figured, if I don't get one job, I'll go for 2, make sure that I, open up my odds, open up my possibilities. Guess what? Afterwards, he was given 2 jobs. He was given both jobs. He could now pick and choose which job he wanted most. And so that was a really powerful experience for him. And it was powerful for me too, to see that he actually put the tools into practice. Now, I'm not saying that he was absolved from preparing from the interview, traditional preparation. We want to make sure that we're doing as much traditional preparation as well. You want to make sure that you know the answers. That's going to help you feel confident. You want to know that you've got, all your ducks in a row. You want to know that you've dotted your I's, you've crossed your T's, that everything is prepared for the interview. But you know what? Nobody's ever ready. Nobody's ever fully 100% prepared for anything. Let me ask you this. Those of you who are parents, were you ever really prepared or ready to be a parent? Yep. I like it. I've got a comment down in the chat. Elliot was saying that he talks about the clock and saying that if you see the sun, maybe like Crocodile Dundee, if anyone saw that movie. It was an Australian movie many years ago. But Crocodile Dundee, he goes and looks at the sun and he's able to then tell what time it is by the sun. So very good, very good. So there are ways that we can see that time is moving because the sun is moving. So very good. No, thank you for that. All right, so we're in a situation now where you and I might think to ourselves, well, how do I produce better results in my life? How do let's say I want to become a millionaire. How do I do that? Or how do I create a relationship that's filled with love and passion? Or how do I get great physical health? How do I feel really good about myself? How can I build my level of confidence and knowing? How can I improve my spirituality, get direction and purpose? Or maybe connectedness to God, the universe, your higher self, whatever you believe God to be. So you might think about all these areas of life and say, well, how do I do it? Now, NLP is a great way to do this, because think about NLP as turning decades into days. You see, here's the great truth. If you were to go to the basketball arena, let's say you want to be good at basketball and you're throwing there's free throws and there's 3-point shots. So let's say you wanted to get good at your shooting and you're out there practicing over and over again. Now, it takes a certain amount of time to practice every move. Now, the beautiful thing about the mind is how fast can the mind shoot a shot and get it in? How fast could you do it in your mind as compared to real life? Now, in real life, you might take the shot, it might go through, you've got to run, recover the ball, come back again. The whole process might take between 8 and 10 seconds. And if you miss the shot, you've now got to go recover the ball. It might take you 15 seconds to get back. So think about that. You're taking 15 seconds every single shot. Now, here's the beauty of your mind, is that you could do in 15 seconds, you could take 15, 30 shots easily in your mind, in your imagination. So the beauty of your mind is you can do things faster. You can do things more effectively. You can never miss if you do it properly. You always get it in. You always get it in. You always get it in. And you don't have to recover the ball. You don't have to spend time doing that. Now, what other applications are there for that? Think about it in anything you want to do in life. Think about it as the job interview. You could rehearse the job interview much quicker in your mind than actually doing a job interview. Let's say you wanted to do 10 job interviews to get practice at it. Now, 10 job interviews might take 10 hours. If each of the interviews goes for 40 minutes, there's some travel, everything else, you're looking at about 10 hours to do 10 job interviews. How long might it take you in your mind to do 10 job interviews? Let's say you just mentally rehearse them. Well, I believe you do all 10 within half an hour. You could easily, in maybe 10, 15 minutes, you could do 10 job interviews. Now, that's the beauty of your mind and your imagination. And that's the way we turn decades into days. That's the way we take something that's very big and it's going to take us a long time to do, and we shrink it down. Now, I'm not saying that this replaces the need for physical activity. You can't just do it in your mind. You've actually got to get out and do the work physically, because you want to get it not only in your mind, but in the nervous system of your body. And to get it into the nervous system, you must actually do the physical activity. But what I am suggesting is that you can shrink the time of success by using meditation, mental rehearsal, mental projection, neurological repatterning tools and techniques, and NLP. And that's the beauty of it. You're really bringing, something that should take however long. Actually, I'll give you a really good example. Tony Robbins, and one of the founders of NLP, worked with law enforcement in the US with sharpshooting. And at the time, it was taking 6 weeks for them to do their sharpshooting course, and their accuracy rate was about 20%, or their pass rate. So many people were repeating the course, and this was insufficient. So what happened was Tony Robbins and, like I said, one of the founders of NLP got with the best sharpshooters. They said, give us your 5 or 6 best sharpshooters. And what they did was they modeled their behavior. They modeled what they saw, not only what they physically saw, but what they saw in their mind, what mental pictures they created, what they felt inside, what was the internal dialogue, what they said to themselves, using your auditory digital component of focus. That's your self-talk. So what was their internal dialogue? And what they did was they modeled this technique of sharpshooting. Now, after they finished the process, they were able to move a 6-week program into just 2 weeks. So they reduced it by 4 weeks. That's better than 50%. Okay, that's better than halving it. They've almost, taken 1/3 of the time. Well, they've taken 1/3 of the time to get a better result. In fact, they weren't just getting 20% pass rate, they were now getting 80% success rate, simply because they taught using NLP techniques. And that's how powerful it is. So when you think about any area of life, if you think about making money, you want to say, well, how do I attract more wealth into my life? This is the way to do it. If you want a better relationship, this is the way to do it. If you want better physical health, if you want better results, start using your mind. Start mentally rehearsing, mental projection. Start using these tools and techniques. All right, does that make sense? Very, very good. Very, very good.
Welcome back, and I hope you learned something great, something you're going to take out to improve the quality of your life. Now, this has been Joshua Roy. I'm your happiness and fulfillment coach. I'm a results coach helping you to take more control of your mind, your thoughts, your actions, your behaviors, and your life. If you haven't already, make sure you follow, make sure you subscribe so that you can get all of the new exciting content that is delivered through this and other platforms.